Okay. So tonight, we're talking about somatic guidance and supervision, and I really love this particular session. I love to talk about somatic work, and actually, just I'm gonna bring you guys back for a sec. How many people have either done training in somatic or um, have read a lot about it, work with that at all? Yeah, okay. Can I ask what sort of training have you done? What's your level of familiarity? Um,
I haven't done any certifications or anything like that, but I've done like seminars like embodied therapist and the polyvagal training includes a lot of somatic work
all right.
as well.
Okay. Yeah.
I
Nada?
would say same. I also did the basic principles of somatic experiencing about 2 years ago, and I want to do the level one. I just haven't gotten around to signing up, but definitely
Okay.
the plans.
Okay. Yeah. Vanessa?
And sorry, I think my internet's being weird today, so I got
Oh,
kicked out and I'm
no problem. I was
sorry,
just asking.
everyone.
No problem. I was just asking, we're talking a little bit about somatic work with clients to, oh, there she goes again. Well, she'll pop in and out. Okay. So I will say, about the somatic experiencing, I did their training, oh gosh, probably about 10, 12 years ago now, through the Somatic Experiencing Institute with Linda Stelt, who, if you get a chance to train with her, and I mean, there's wonderful trainers, but she was really fantastic. And it changed the way that I worked with clients. It changed the way that I saw clients. And nope. Oh, be right back. Okay. Yep. So there we go. So I wanted to make this a part of the supervision training because I think, when I've been working with my own supervisees, a lot of times when they've been doing some good work or they're hitting a so-called impasse with a client, or they're sort of stuck or not sure where to go, or they feel like they're rehashing a lot of the cognitive, belief-based, behavior-based kinds of things, which are important, but the client is kind of exhausting from that and they're not sure what to do. I find that somatic work is a really, really wonderful way to go. And the thing about, in my experience, the thing about somatic work is that you really cannot get stuck with it. So if you don't know where to go, you can actually use somatic work with, with very immediate kinds of things. And it is so cool to do this work because it really taps into the wisdom of the nervous system and the body. And it almost is like a pet dispenser of stuff. I kind of say to my clients when I use it in supervisee, that's a little bit like you sort of get the ball rolling. You sort of set a domino, you tip a domino, and then this, using a lot of metaphors here, but it's almost like this Pez dispenser of things that starts to just organically arise that we can then work with somatically. And it's almost as if the nervous system kind of begins to, it's a lot of mixed metaphors here, but it's a lot like working with a haunted house. I don't know if anybody's familiar with the paranormal, shows, those ghost shows, but it's very similar to that in many ways where you and the client are going into this space inside where they don't often visit, and we're inviting what's there to show itself, and we're learning how to talk its language, which is very different from the language of left brain, top left brain kind of stuff. Okay, great. Okay, so some of this then will be a little bit of repeat, but let's go through some of this. So just kind of a reminder, when we are doing somatic work with people, we're really kind of thinking about these 3 levels of nervous system. And so we're asking our supervisee to kind of, think about, whatever they're presenting in their session, where is the client's nervous system in this issue or this story or this so-called impasse, the stuckness, the stuck point is, and often it's not in the sort of social engagement. It's often up in sympathetic activation, or it's down in that sort of hypoarousal, sort of dorsal vagal activation. And so I think the impulse for a lot of us, and including our supervisees, is to try and analyze and get out in front of it and understand it, and then try and get in control of it. And so somatic work is very different from that. So it's a little bit like learning how to write with your wrong hand, because we've been so trained as therapists to analyze and to use top left brain sort of stuff. And I think that's really true of supervisees, of course, and us as therapists. Even if we're going to be doing in the moment work with our clients, we're still in that mindset of wanting to get out in front of it and understand it. So we're really training our supervisees in these moments to think about this differently and to develop a comfort level with, I don't know perhaps what's happening, but here's the nervous system level that this client is in. And so we just kind of want to maybe even use something like this as a template for where is your client? Where would they say that they are? Could you even take this into your client and kind of use this as an internal mapping for, we may not know why, we may not know yet what we're going to do, but where is this for you right now? The reason I have the 80 here is that when I work with my clients or supervisees, I usually say, what we're looking for in general functioning in life is to be in the social engagement, regulated window of tolerance state, 75, 80% of the time. If you're able to do that, you're probably living a pretty functional life. Of course, clients will often say, well, it's not 80%, I'm in there 30% or 40%, or when I'm in this situation, I'm in there 0%. And again, I'm back into this sort of sympathetic or dorsal vagal kind of thing. So we just want to first start by mapping that out. And again, as I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, I'm always very curious about where a client of mine or where a supervisee's client is in terms of their mobility level. So just a very quick recap. When polyvagal theory sort of talks about this hierarchy of defenses when we engage or meet a threat. So again, the first, typically, this is very generalized, but typically, we will meet a threat first through social engagement. We're sort of still in that window of tolerance. We use social engagement to try to appeal to the threat or talk it down, attempt to negotiate. We might call others and engage them to come and help us, seek support after the event is over through social engagement, all things that may help us eliminate the threat or help us process the event after. If social engagement is not going to be an effective defense, it's not going to reduce or eliminate the threat, then typically the next order of business for the nervous system is to activate fight flight. And that's where the sympathetic nervous system clicks on. All of the chemistry so rapidly changes in the brain and the body and allows us to become really fast and really strong and really loud, all things that can help us protect ourselves or save us. So it gives us the energy to yell, to scream, to rage, to intimidate, to scratch, to punch, to kick, to spit, to use a weapon, to run really fast and get away. And if that defense happens to reduce or eliminate the threat, the nervous system eventually goes back into the window of tolerance and kind of, we often will use social engagement to help us process that event. And, developing PTSD or post-traumatic kinds of stuff probably isn't in our future. Again, polyvagal theory sort of, and somatic experiencing very much agrees with this, that the last resort option, so social engagement hasn't worked for this threat, fight or flight has not worked. The threat is either too big, too strong, too fast, too armed, etc., to help us. So the nervous system automatically activates that last resort, third defense of dorsal vagal activation, as well as a number of other brain and body functions to put us into freeze shutdown. And we talked a bit about, freeze 1, freeze 2, feigned death, going unconscious. So we stiffen, we go still, we numb here, we dissociate, we have literal body paralysis. We can't talk, we can't scream, we can't move, we might lose consciousness or leave our body. And this is where that immobility factor becomes really important or really salient. So you can see that in the green, when we're in the green or we're in the red and we're meeting a threat from there is mobility. Even in social engagement, where you're talking, you're talking to negotiate and calling out for help and activating, carrying others to support you or talk you through it afterward, it has action in it. It has mobility, and obviously fight flight has action and mobility in it. But the problem with having to resort to the nervous system having to resort to immobility, it's not a conscious choice, body automatically does that, is that now we are in immobility. And as we learned, and as many of you know from polyvagal theory and Stephen Porges' assertion, and Peter Levine, who's the developer of somatic experiencing, also agrees that when immobility paired with fear occurs, your chances of post-traumatic stress or mental health issues afterward, it really becomes higher. And so we want to think about this when a client seems stuck or a supervisee's client seems stuck. And sometimes what I like to do is engage them in a discussion of where might your client's nervous system be experiencing ongoing sense of immobility inside, where they had a fearful or stressful event and were not able to mobilize or activate action. And so they ended up with this really important defense that perhaps saved their life or reduced their fighting so that they weren't further provoking the threat, or caused them to mentally dissociate what they couldn't physically escape from. Really important, right? But afterward, that immobilized energy, that immobilized more intense social engagement or fight flight energy and chemistry, and that thwarted mobility and movement has to have its release. And so Levine talks a little bit about, completing the cycle of defense. I just finished a book on childhood sexual abuse for women. And within that, a lot of what it talks about is this immobility paired with fear, this last resort freeze shutdown. And after the event, the threat or the abuse or, the trauma occurred, did you have proper underlying social engagement to help you release, and then that all of that energy that had to lock down so you could go into freeze shutdown? And were you able to remobilize that and complete the cycle of defense that could not be completed in order for you to freeze shut down and survive? And so that becomes a really important question in supervision, because I think a lot of times, we're all just sort of learning about this nervous system information. It's been around obviously for 15 years or so, but it's obviously getting much more press literally in the last number of years. But I think a lot of, new therapists may not know this. And so we can kind of guide them into this idea about immobility paired with fear as a real touch point, perhaps, when we're doing supervision. So we want to think about a few things. We want to think about and this is how I frame it in terms of parts work. Um, let's say it this way. The child, I like to think of it this way. There are two child parts inside. And one being the wounded child. And I say it's the child inside of us, the part of our nervous system, the part of our memory, the part of our middle and lower brain, however you want to say it, that carries our weight, our WEIGHT. It carries all of our raw hurt and pain, all of our raw fear, all of our unfiltered memories, the trauma that happened to our mental happened to us mentally, but also to our body. It carries unfiltered truth. And I have a lot of respect for these parts, and I'm very clear with clients about that. So, because they really don't get the option to not experience this. They're really the keeper of truth. They carry our weight. And then we have the waiting child parts that, in my experience, come up so much in therapy, which are the ones that hold hope that somehow things can change inside. They keep track of our unmet wants, our unmet needs. They believe that healing maybe is possible and that we're a grown-up that can help them. It's what brings them to therapy every week or two, right? They're wanting connection even when it's hard for them. But it's hard because they don't know how to navigate that. So really kind of getting a sense of that and then working somatically with these parts of self can also be very helpful. And I do talk about the engaged child parts, the ones that are playful and carefree, and they are curious and imaginative, and they want fun and silliness and present moment focus and trusting vulnerability. And sometimes those also come out as the therapy progresses, and we need sometimes to walk our supervisees through how the client can also be present with this part of themselves, because of course this part of themselves initially is going to feel quite frightening. And cognitive behavioral stuff is great for this, and analyzing this in psychoeducation is necessary. But I find that the somatic work with this kind of vulnerability, this kind of raw, real sort of stuff, the stuff that's just in the body, it really helps a lot when clients are at this stage. And again, if our supervisees don't really know a lot about body stuff or somatic stuff, and I don't know that they're getting a lot of training from what I'm understanding in their programs, they get a lot of CBT and DBT and all the important stuff, but this becomes really important to kind of guide them in this direction. And then, of course, we can also use somatic work with protection parts, protector parts, or protection mechanisms, or defensive responses, or whatever you want to call them. And so, again, we're doing this in a way that has a lot of immediacy. We're not kind of going into the past or the worries about the future regarding these reactions in our clients or our supervisees' clients. We're really looking at, how is this showing up in this moment in time? And again, certainly not for all new therapists, but I think for a lot of therapists, even seasoned therapists, being able to kind of stay in that moment with your client without tripping off into top left brain kind of stuff, past kind of stuff, future kind of stuff, analyzing beliefs, behaviors, all that kind of stuff can be really tricky because we're just so wired and trained to go there. So again, I like to show supervisees, certainly what child part might be activating in this stuck moment you're having, what protector part or parts might be coming up into their life to try and help them navigate and survive and cope with a world or a circumstance that still feels too overwhelming. And here's the thing, where immobility is still too present. And again, this may not be all situations in their life, but there might be some circumstances where that immobility, that activation of that memory in the child part, and then the rushing in of these protector parts to help can really become an issue. So I like to kind of show this to my supervisees, also to my clients, and say, so here's kind of how things can happen. You know, the client is in a present day situation, just going about their lives, and something triggers them. And it can be something that they know is a trigger or something they don't get as a trigger. It can be something that they're, aware is a hot button issue for them or not. It can just feel like a normal day. Oops. Rid of that. So when the trigger occurs, what immediately happens is that wounded or, oh, you know what? It's going to kick me off here in about 10 minutes. I'll tell you what. Let's pick up where we left off. I'm going to go to my Zoom. I'm on Shirley in my Zoom. I'm going to go to my Zoom. I'm going to send you a new invite, and then we'll pick up where we left off. Sorry about that. Okay.